berkenalan satu sama lain mungkin bisa kali ya kita ubah profil namanya jadi nama dan perusahaan gitu, kita bisa kenal satu sama lain. Baik, karena waktu sudah menunjukkan pukul 10:05 waktu Indonesia Barat, kami akan mulai kegiatan hari ini. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Indonesia Contact Center Association Technology Sharing in collaboration with Verint. We would like to say thank you for joining us in this lovely morning. Perkenalkan, nama saya Alia dari perwakilan dari Indonesia Contact Center Association. Kegiatan hari ini merupakan kerjasama antara Indonesia Contact Center Association dan Verint dengan mengangkat tema Cognitive Intelligence, a Game Changer for Knowledge Management. Hari ini kami berkesempatan menghadirkan dua pembicara dari Verint, yaitu Mr. Tim Matthews, Solution Director APEC Digital and Assisted Service from Verint, dan juga Mbak Sisi Thohir, Indonesia Sales Manager dari Verint. Hari ini akan ada hadiah berupa voucher OVO senilai Rp300.000 untuk 5 orang dengan pertanyaan terbaik, serta akan ada hadiah lucky draw yang disediakan oleh Poli yang akan kami umumkan cara memenangkannya di akhir acara. Jadi jangan lupa untuk ikuti sampai akhir kegiatan hari ini. Kegiatan ini akan kami mulai dengan penjelasan materi terkait Verint yang akan dibawakan oleh Mbak Sisi Thohir, Indonesia Sales Manager dari Verint. Kepada Mbak Sisi, kami persilakan. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Alia. Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu.
Selamat pagi.
Oke, saya Sisi Thohir, saya represent untuk account-account di Indonesia untuk produk-produk Verint. Terima kasih untuk ICCA untuk kerjasamanya dalam event ini, juga kami disupport oleh Poli. Oke, Tim. Oke. Every organization runs on knowledge. Artinya adalah setiap pastinya semua company itu mengandalkan pengetahuan, baik pengetahuan tentang company itu sendiri, bisa juga pengetahuan tentang produk-produknya. Nomor satu adalah informasi. Next please. Kenapa harus Verint Knowledge Management? Next please. Mungkin saya share sedikit tentang company kami. Verint berdiri pada 2002. Sekarang ini base kami ada di Melville, New York. Walaupun cikal bakal Verint sendiri dari tahun 1996 di Delaware. Di saat ini kami sudah hampir 20 tahun, ada sekitar lebih dari 40 kantor di seluruh dunia. Dan solusi-solusi Verint sendiri dipakai oleh 85% dari company-company di Fortune 100. Kenapa harus dengan Verint? Kami amat sangat serius untuk solusi-solusi dalam customer engagement. Baik itu solusi-solusi di knowledge management, kami juga sangat lumayan terkenal dari solusi-solusi analytics dan especially AI. Seperti tren saat ini, semua solusi akan menginfuse AI. Verint salah satu company itu. Dan berikutnya for Verint Indonesia. Next please. Di Indonesia, Verint sudah ada dari tahun 2004. Kantor kami ada di Menara Batavia, timnya lumayan besar, sekitar 120 orang. 120 orang ini termasuk di dalamnya adalah tim implementasi. Jadi apabila untuk proyek-proyek di Indonesia, kami hanya akan mengandalkan, mungkin sebagian ada resource dari luar negeri, tapi most of it, majoritinya akan dikerjakan oleh tenaga-tenaga Indonesia. Kenapa kami mengemfasasi ini? Karena kami merasa untuk implementasi dengan tim-tim di Indonesia, waktunya akan lebih cepat, komunikasinya akan lebih baik, dan juga yang nggak kalah pentingnya, cost bisa dioptimize. Karena tim-tim yang di-support ada di kantor di Indonesia. Dan juga salah satu keunggulan dari tim Verint Indonesia adalah kami mensupport juga Verint Global. Jadi kami untuk company-company yang melakukan support follow the sun, kami juga menservis negara-negara Asia Pasifik seperti Thailand, Singapura. Tim Verint Indonesia juga mensupport negara-negara tersebut, baik implementasi atau support. Next please, berikutnya adalah rekognisi dari industri. Di dunia KM, knowledge management, Verint bukan pemain baru. Kami sudah cukup lama di space ini. Bahkan untuk 2021 ini kami sudah menerima penghargaan di KM World. Juga rekognisi dari company itu sendiri. Untuk berikutnya saya perkenalkan tim Matthews, Apex Solution Director yang akan membawakan lebih ke produknya. Over to you, Tim.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for inviting me. So, I wanted to talk a little today about knowledge management as a concept, but I also wanted to introduce some new ideas to you. And in particular, we're going to talk about this idea of cognitive intelligence, which is driving, I think, a new generation of knowledge management. Let's just set the scene, though, with a few basics here. So right now, I've been doing this job for over 6 years. Right now, I've never seen knowledge management so active in the marketplace. And I think there's a few reasons for this that go to some of these points here. So why is knowledge management important? Number one, it helps drive both customer and employee experience. So with a lot of you familiar, obviously, with contact center operations, the employee experience that you're trying to give for your contact center is to make their job easier, make the way that they can engage with the customer on a phone call or a live chat or whatever as smooth as possible. What you don't want them doing is having to spend time
Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
What you don't want them to do is to have to waste time or give a disjointed experience trying to find an answer to something that's really not that difficult. So we're really aiming for the experience for the employee to be as simple and as smooth as possible, particularly when we're talking about new employees into your organization. We're trying to make them as productive as your most experienced employees. And secondly, it also drives customer experience. So what I see a lot of in the marketplace is the knowledge that's given to an internal user base. For example, your contact center, it could be in a branch, could be in a back office. That tends to be supplied from one system, and a completely separate system supplies knowledge to a customer. Or it could be multiple systems. So, for example, we could be talking about providing knowledge up to your website, and then maybe there's a separate system that provides knowledge to your mobile app, and then you might have just deployed a chatbot, and it's got its own knowledge base as well. And we find that the customer experience is quite poor if we have this, I'll call it silos of content here, particularly where you have a customer interaction that needs to jump across these silos. So an obvious one would be that the customer starts on your web self-service, then they start engaging with your chatbot, and then the chatbot has a threshold where it knows it has to hand it over to a live agent in your contact center. Are they all getting the same knowledge, and is it nice and quick? So that's what we mean by driving the customer and employee experience. Number two, we're talking about efficiency and productivity. I've somewhat talked to this already, but particularly in the contact center, one thing we see is that to get a new hire up to full productivity, the approach often taken is to put the new hire into a training course and get them to learn every product and every process inside out. If you have a systematized way of supporting them, so for example, in a knowledge management system, if you've got a way of guiding the new hire through a use case, the use case might be, how do I get my bank balance? How do I unlock my phone? Things like that. If you can give them those answers, you don't need to train them on the entire process, all you do is train them how to get the information. So what we find is that by correctly harnessing the new generation of knowledge management, we can achieve outcomes such as getting a new hire more productive more quickly. So we've got examples where the new hire has got to full productivity in half the time they used to. So that's a very good payback there. Thirdly, and this is at different stages of maturity in different countries, but what we notice is that there is a much higher focus on compliance. So compliance with your corporate goals and compliance with external regulations. So there might be government regulations or industry regulations. So being able to do this certainly in the environment that we are in today is a lot more challenging. And then lastly, talking to digital transformation and customer self-service. I already talked to that in the first point. Back to my original statement about knowledge management being a more active technology and a more active market for us than ever before. Putting those 4 points together, I can think of 2 reasons why big organizations like the ones you work for are focusing more on this and more on using knowledge for it. Number one is COVID. What we all know COVID has done has made it a lot harder for the average customer service employee to simply get the answer they need to tell to the customer in the old informal way. So the informal way would be, I don't know the answer, but my colleague sitting right next to me does, so I'm just going to stop and ask them. Or the supervisor is walking around the contact center floor. I can put my hand up and the supervisor comes and how do I handle this? It's way harder to do this when half of your contact center is working from home or all of your contact center is working from home. So because of that, there's been a greater drive to systematize the provision of these answers to the workers. That's one reason. The other reason I've seen is really the explosion of these new channels, and Chatbot is one. So the real challenge with Chatbot is you're trying to have your robot or your AI mimic the human conversation, and it cannot do that unless it has really well-structured answers available to give to the customer and to be able to do that really quickly. So we're seeing those sort of new channels really driving the resurgence, I would say, of knowledge being embedded in the process. Having said that, I'm really noticing that, and this is my opinion as well as Verint's, that most companies are just not getting the best out of their collective knowledge. So typically what you do have is a small base of people in your organization who have been there a long time and really know everything. And the challenge is, how could you bring everybody up to that level? What I see the real challenges are described on this slide here. There's really 4 areas that I would focus on. Number one is speed to answer. So I like to talk about modern day knowledge management as being able to deliver knowledge at the speed of the conversation. What I see mostly is a view of knowledge management as like a back office process and something that you tab across to look up. That simply doesn't work in an environment that has to work at a fast pace. So a contact center, face-to-face in a branch, or the customer themselves working on a website or a mobile app trying to get an answer. If they can't get it at the speed they're trying to have the conversation at, they typically won't use that knowledge system and they'll use another way to answer the question. And often the other way they use to answer the question is not what you would want them corporately to do. They keep their own little notes. As I said, they try and ask someone else. Not really appropriate. You're asking them, or you really want them to use the corporate answer. So their speed to answer is something that I see is still a real struggle for example, the average contact center, is to be able to serve the knowledge up fast enough. And today I intend to show you ways that you can solve this problem. Number 2 is that the knowledge that is held in the organization just can't be shared at scale. And I did mention the work from home challenge there. So the inexperienced or the lower performing employees simply can't get supported in the way that they need. Number 3 is that customers trying to use self-service just can't find the relevant information. And this is actually where I'm going to start when I show you some live demos here. What really is the challenge? And we're at this really interesting point in knowledge management where this is about to change dramatically so that you can get the answers you want so much more quickly and more accurately. And lastly, knowledge is not consistent. As I mentioned before, I see separate systems for the contact center, for the back office, for the website, the mobile app, the chatbot, etc. It's not only dangerous in that the customer might be getting inconsistent answers, it's also really expensive in terms of internal cost, trying to keep all this knowledge aligned. You have to update 5 systems, for example. So that's really the challenge that we've got. I'm going to move into some answers here, but I wanted to get a little bit of engagement with you. So what we're going to do is ask you a question aligned to what we've just seen there. So the poll question is going to be, how many different knowledge bases does your organization currently have that provide information to both staff and customers? And there are possibilities there. So we're going to pop up a dialog box where you can enter your choices. So there you go. So please take a moment to just think that through, and we'll let the collective answers aggregate for 30 or 45 seconds, and then we'll bring up and we'll see what the overall situation is within your association. I'll be very interested to see the answer. I've run this poll in a few different seminars and get quite a range of answers here. If you have one, you're doing magnificently. That is just fantastic. So we'll see how many of those that we get. All right, here we go. It's pretty good. Okay, so we've got over a third of the organizations have one knowledge base that they use to serve knowledge to both staff and customers. So a single knowledge base that can be accessed by both. That's great. We have probably more the common that I see, 3 to 5 is pretty average, and we have a few there more than 5. So, you know, there's some challenge there, but if we look at that, probably 2/3 of the attendees on this seminar have this issue that there's at least 2 different knowledge bases that you've got to work with. So let's look at how we could attack that problem. So I'm going to do this by explaining what I think the challenge is and what the answer is to having that a consistent knowledge management. I'm going to refer to it as enterprise knowledge management. A lot of the problem is that you're probably hearing from many vendors like us that are telling you what knowledge management is, and they're telling you all a different story. So before I want to talk to you in any detail about what you know our particular technology is, I want to talk about the basic concepts that I think collectively add up to a knowledge management capability. It's not a system. This is really a business capability. You could probably do all of this without a system at all if you really had it well managed. But of course, the system just makes it so much more easier to pull together. So these are really business management concepts for knowledge. So number one is, how do you create the knowledge? You need a way of making it very easy for the people that have got to create the content that the rest of your organization consume, and that it can be published very quickly. So, you know, we're talking about systems there, obviously, that can share the content, and you need to be able to go in and do it as fast as your business moves. So in some businesses that I know are probably on this call, like telcos, things change really quickly. You can have to respond to the competitors bringing out a new campaign, and you just have to bring something the very next morning. So that's all well and good, and there are plenty of systems out there that make it really simple to create or update your content. A lot of collaboration tools out there make it really easy for multiple people to work on content. The real problem is, I see with a lot of these collaboration tools, is that there's no sense of corporate or enterprise-wide governance or discipline around it. And what that usually results in is everybody who creates their documents create it the way they like to see it, with their own format, their own naming conventions, etc. And what is the outcome of that? People that come after the collaboration and want to find the content really struggle because they don't understand what the search needs to look like, what the layout looks like, etc. So in this same area of creation, you actually need a concept of an approval process to make sure that the publishing of the content is consistent across the organization. So the look and feel's the same, the structure, etc. So there are plenty of other systems that have great approval processes, but they put so much weight on you that you cannot do the first thing, which is simple and fast editing. So we've got to find this balance between being able to change or create the content quickly, but making sure that there's some level of approval in there and some level of structure in there. So we'll talk about how we do that a little bit today. And then the other part of kind of the management of the knowledge is what I would call curate or manage. So really on this side of this slide are the things that management and authors do to put the organization in a position to serve knowledge to the users. So curate means once the knowledge is in circulation, once it's live, it's being used, how do we make sure that it stays live, that it stays relevant, that it gets refreshed, etc. So these are things like acting on feedback and suggestions, having a very good mechanisms for making sure that feedback and suggestions are acted on, having really good reporting and analytics to show you this document was used very actively, but the next one wasn't. This document was rated highly by the user base, this one wasn't, giving you these mechanisms for knowing how to improve it. So create and curate are the things that really happen behind the scenes to make sure that the users have a very easy journey. And the users shouldn't ever really be aware of what's going on in this side. Now we get to the exciting part, which is what does it mean for whoever wants the knowledge? And by whoever, I certainly mean the customers accessing it directly or the staff accessing it and then sharing it with the customers. So we're typically talking about, to find your document, you're using techniques like a search. Everybody understands what a search is. I'm going to introduce a new concept today of cognitive search. Related content, so when you open one document up, can you easily get to another similar document? And using advanced techniques like filtering and browsing, part of the challenge we often see is that filters are available in knowledge systems, but they're so complicated to use that people just don't bother. So they just use a standard search all the time. So how can we make the filtering and the browsing a little bit easier? And then we want to talk about more advanced ways of presenting the content. So perhaps you don't even have to try and find it yourself. So firstly, we need to take advantage of multifaceted content as much as we can. And by that, I mean content that is optimized for the user and for the channel. So clearly, if we were going to provide a piece of knowledge into a chatbot window, we wouldn't have a video or lots of graphic content. It just doesn't go there. On the other hand, we might want to direct the chatbot customer to a website sitting behind it or to a mobile app where we could have some more rich content there. So it's optimizing the content to meet what the audience and what their channel is. Next, it's being able to present the content in a way that really means you don't have to use one of the find techniques up the top there, that somehow we're guiding or suggesting to the user the right content. So I wanted to introduce some of those concepts to you today. And here's probably the key thing. In this entire session today, there's probably a lot of information that I'll present at you. If you're only going to remember 4 things from today, here's your checklist. In the find section, I'll talk about cognitive search and auto-related content. In the present section, decision trees and contextual awareness. They're the big outcomes and the big new things that are interesting. The rest of it is important and good discipline in knowledge management, but the real interesting stuff is in those 4 boxes there. So I'm going to go straight to those 4 now. I'm going to explain some concepts, but I'm also going to demonstrate live some of these things. Firstly, I wanted to talk about cognitive search and auto-related content that kind of go together, so I put them in the same area here. And the easiest way for me to talk about cognitive search is to give you an actual example that you can all relate to. I could choose this from any industry. This one I'm choosing from banking. So our customer here has lost his card. What does he do? The obvious thing you would do in self-service is you would make a search for, I've lost my card. So I wanted to explain to you the challenge of this. It sounds very easy. Same thing really applies to a contact center agent, is that we can make a search in our system to find something. So the challenge that you've got is the way that current generation search engines work versus cognitive. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history here, and then I'm going to explain the difference between current generation and future generation, all relevant to this use case, I lost my card. So hopefully not to bore you too much, but just to talk about the evolution of search. When search engines first came about, they were what we call a keyword search. So that means regardless of which language you're working in, the software has to match keywords. So if you wanted to do a search, you would be searching for lost card. And it literally has to go and find in whatever the content it is it's searching for, those two terms to return a positive result. Now, as time progressed, there were lots of extra techniques that got added to basic keyword search that made the search engine more powerful. And today we collectively call that natural language processing, or NLP. NLP is essentially still a keyword search, but it does some nice things. So it can, for example, you could put in a natural language search string like, help me, I've lost my card, and it will know how to ignore words like me, help. It'll just focus on the important words like lost card. But at the end of the day, its challenge still is that it's got to match those terms, the key words, to bring back a result. So what is cognitive search? So I want you to stop for a moment and think, how does your brain work? If you're, say, a contact center agent and this customer rang in and he said, can you help me? I was down at Clark Quay, or I was down at the local bank the other day, and I just looked and I can't find my card anywhere. I don't know what to do. Can you help me out there? So they've used a lot of words there. And if you were a search engine, you would be attempting to simply say, what are the important words? And I'm going to go and match those to something in my database. A human brain doesn't work like that. A human brain processes cognitively, and that means they try to understand the meaning before they gain the solution. So when I come in and I talk to the contact center agent, and I maybe have too many words in there, the agent almost unconsciously will be saying, okay, how can I align what the customer just said to terms that we use in our business so it makes it easy for me to actually respond? And so you make that cognitive alignment there. The challenge is the next customer comes in and they don't say, I've lost my card. They come in and they say, can you help me? I've misplaced my credit card. Or I forgot my credit card. Well, they use other words that mean the same as lost, but the challenge is for a keyword engine or an NLP engine, it's really looking to match the word. A cognitive search doesn't work this way. It works off the language model. So then to explain this in a little bit more detail, there is something we call a word net. A word net is not owned by Verint. A word net has been produced by academic institutions around the world and is maintained by them. Think of a word net as like a thesaurus, if you're familiar with that term. So it's an online model that links words in a language to each other. And most major languages have a word net in existence already. So in English, a word net will have the linkages that say lost and stolen have a similar meaning, not exactly the same. Lost and misplaced have almost an identical meaning. lost and forgot have a similar but not always identical meaning. And I sometimes call it a thesaurus on steroids. It's like the normal thesaurus, but the linkages are just amazing. So we don't, as I said, we don't own that in Verint. We leverage off this WordNet. But what we have in our software is artificial intelligence that can process the WordNet and cognitively align the search terms used to something real. So if all of that has been a little confusing for you, let me show you exactly how the difference is. I'm not going to go to this website and show you because it wouldn't be fair on this bank. But I went to a bank somewhere in Asia. It's not in Indonesia. And I could go to many, many public websites and get the same outcome. And it's a organization that uses NLP as the search engine in their website. So I went onto a bank site and I did a search on their homepage using their search engine, and I simply said lost card. And these are the search results I got. So I got 2 results. What should I do if my card is lost or stolen? What should I do if my card is lost or stolen? Seems to be the same, but that looks to be a relevant result for lost card with an NLP search because we're matching the terms, and the terms lost card exist in here. So far, so good. Then I ran another search, stolen card. And again, the NLP engine did okay because lost and stolen, stolen and card is in here. So if the customer comes in and uses the terms you expect them to use, they get a good result. But look what happened when I used the term misplaced. I said misplaced card. I get a completely different set of results. And not one of them is the result that we got on the previous 2 searches. And then lastly, I did a search using the term forgot, but I did it more of as a natural language search. I forgot my card, and again, I got a completely different set of results. So the point I'm making here is that this organization, this is their customer-facing website. This is how they are looking to give self-service to customers. If I go onto their site and I use the search terms they expect me to use, like lost, stolen, I get a nice result. But the moment I use some other language, I don't get any result that I'm looking for. And as a customer, I probably am frustrated, I give up, or I ring the contact center, which means the whole benefit of deflection is lost. And the reason that's happening is the NLP/keyword can't resolve some of these other terms. Now, in some systems, you can manually tell the system that when they use the term misplaced, equate that to lost. But that's a very large administration overhead that you're putting on yourself there. So I want to show you the alternative to this. I'm going to show you this in a few different examples, and I'll tab out of my PowerPoint here. So what you're looking at now is the standard user interface for the Verint Cognitive Search Knowledge Management System. And I loaded up some of these documents into this system. And I just want to give you the example. So this is cognitive search at work, and you'll see the difference. So if I do lost card, I get a set of results. And you need to have a look at those results just quickly. Then I'll go back and I'll do stolen card. I'm getting the same set of results. Now I'm going to do, misplaced card. The important thing here is that the word misplaced does not exist in any of these documents, but it's been able to find it by resolving the cognitive model. And lastly, I forgot my card. And I'll get the same set of results there. They're not always in the same order, but they're pretty close. So what we're seeing is that the software has cognitively resolved the search. Now, you might be sitting there and saying, yeah, but Tim, this is your demo system. You're faking it. You've just set this up as you like. So to prove to you that I'm not doing this, I'm going to show you this working in a website for a client organization of ours. And after this event, you can happily go and try it yourself on their site. So there are many of these, but I've chosen this one. This is an organization called Fidelity. They are in the UK. They are a wealth management organization. So what they do is they sell things like investment savings plans, retirement plans, things like that directly to their consumers. So that's their site, fidelity.co.uk. And if you went to help and support, get rid of the scam warning. So this is where they allow you to search for a question. This is searching using the Verint cognitive search. So I'm going to use a different search term here. So they have something called a junior investment savings account. So I'm going to search for this, junior ISA. Now, a natural language or a keyword search engine is going to find all these terms because the words junior and the acronym ISA are in all these documents. As I said, you can prove this to yourself later by doing this same search. But what happens if the next customer comes in and they're looking for the same thing? So a junior ISA, that's like I'm a parent and I want to set up an investment savings account for my child. What happens if I didn't use the terms junior and ISA? So firstly, I'm going to use an alternative word for junior that's in the English language. But also, I know in this organization, they often abbreviate junior ISA to JISA, J-I-S-A. So that's a piece of business slang or jargon they use. We can also ingest that into the cognitive model. So we go back and we do something like daughter, JISA. So we got exactly the same set of results here. And I can assure you that in none of these documents do either the terms daughter or JISA exist. The cognitive search model was able to resolve that's what this customer means. So this client, I'll talk this over at the end as well, this client has had more than double the traffic to their self-service site and an equivalent reduction in calls to the contact center since they brought in this cognitive model. And they put that down to the fact that it doesn't matter how you search, you'll still get the right answer. So the real point about a cognitive search is it gets you to your answer more reliably, more faster than a current generation search. And if you think about something like a Google search, your real challenge there is using the right search string to start with. I find when I do a Google search, I have to do one search and I look at the set of results. No, that's not quite what I meant. And then you go back and you do another search that's slightly different. And finally, you get to what you want. Well, that doesn't give you knowledge at the speed of conversation. What we're really looking for is the highest probability that the first time I hit enter on a search, I get what I want. Cognitive search improves your chances by an order of magnitude to do that. So the second thing I wanted to talk about that links to that is this concept of, let me come back to the right place. So sorry, just to let you know, I assume we're going to make these slides available to you all. So I've screenshotted this. I've also screenshotted what I just showed you. So these things from the software and this from the Fidelity site. So you'll be able to go back to that. The next thing I wanted to talk about was auto-related content, which was the second of the two important things. So what you'll probably all be aware of is when you look for an answer in a knowledge system on a website, something like that, you'll usually get your answer and you open up the document here. So this one is what is balance transfer? And there's our answer to balance transfer. Usually what you get in the bottom half of the screen is a set of links to documents that are the same topic. So we call that related content. So you can see here, we've got the answer here. And if that answer didn't satisfy everything that you're asking, maybe one of these will finish the question for you. So you shouldn't have to go back and do another search if the related content is right. Here's your challenge in a current day NLP, knowledge management system, is that you have to manually create these links as the author. So when you're creating the content, you've got to sit down and think to myself, when the customer comes in here and asks this question and gets this document, what else might they want to look at? So not only does that take extra time in authoring, it's not particularly accurate. It's really based on the opinion of that author as to what the related content should be. In a cognitive model, this related content is populated automatically by the system using the same cognitive processing model, and it will learn over time. So it dynamically updates these. In an NLP system, they don't get dynamically updated, they're static. So if you think about that, we've introduced a model of cognitive search where the chances of the first results list being the one that you need, and then secondly, once you've got the document open, if you need some more content, we've also dramatically increased the chances of this list of related content being relevant to you as well. Those two things together mean the chances that the customer gets what they want or the contact center agent gets the information they need at the speed of conversation, the chances are just increased so dramatically. So this really is the game changer that we're talking about. It's that combination of, it's really using the WordNet model, the AI processing to deliver cognitive search and auto-related content in the same model. So that's 2 out of the 4 things I wanted to really get you to think about as important today. Going to move on now and talk about the other 2. The next one was using something that we call decision trees. And so to put this in perspective, while cognitive search is very powerful, it's still using a search mechanism. There are many use cases that I can think of where it's very difficult to construct in your mind the right search because there's too many variables. And I'm going to give you again a couple of examples here. One that's used in a contact center for one of our customers, and another that's used in self-service. So what is a decision tree? A decision tree is generally just is a guided process. Its aim is to lead the user to the right answer without them having to search. And it's most useful when the path to the right piece of knowledge is a little bit complicated. Generally, if you can flowchart it, we can usually make a decision tree for it. So this is an example. We've got a customer in Singapore. They are an outsourcer who runs a contact center for Singapore government. When COVID hit, the Singapore government announced what they call a COVID recovery grant, or a CRG. And that simply means if you have lost income, either you've lost your job or you've had your hours reduced or whatever, as part of COVID, you may qualify for this grant. So it's a form of social security. The problem that the government department had was that there's a very complicated set of guidelines or rules to qualify for the grant. And depending on what your situation is, you may get a different type of grant or a different amount of a grant. So when we first met with them, they handed us this PDF that was something like 10 pages with all of these rules in it. And I looked at it, I got about 2 pages in and I was quite confused. And they had told me there'd been very little take up for this grant from the citizens because they thought it was too complicated. So what we did is we created a decision tree. What I'm showing you here is a graphic of how it looks to the administrator, but on the next slide is actually a screenshot of exactly how it looks to the contact center agent. So this is used by the contact center agent when the citizen phones in to the contact center, and they simply start off by asking the first question, are you currently receiving any support from a government scheme? Yes or no. Depending on the answer to that, it takes you down a certain path. The next question, are you male or female? Very important in Singapore because males can be called up for national service, and if they are on national service, they don't get a CRG. If they clicked on females, they bypass that question. What is your age? You have to be over 21 to get a grant. Are you a citizen or a resident? And then it starts to go into some really complicated questions around things like, do you own property? Do you have multiple properties? Are you employed or self-employed? Were you working full or part-time? It goes on and on and on. So if you can imagine, it would be really hard to come up with a search string to put into search engine to get exactly the right answer. So I won't go through the whole thing. I've just cut it off here. But essentially, this flowchart goes through. And at the end of it, the agent can say, I can confirm that you are or are not eligible, and you're eligible for this type of grant and this kind of level of support. And would you like to apply for it? So guides them through the whole process. So that's one that's used by contact center agent. And so this is effectively just a document in a knowledge management system, but when they open it up, it runs through these choices. You can also do exactly the same for customer self-service. So I'm going to give you an example of a decision tree. I'll go back to the live software. And this time we'll jump across, not Fidelity. This is an organization called Aberdeen, again, financial services. This is their, again, you can go onto this site. This is a public site. This is a website that Aberdeen has for its financial advisors. So these are people that go out and sell on behalf of Aberdeen to customers, things like insurance, wealth management, all of that. And there are a lot of really complicated tax rules relating to the products that they sell. And so Aberdeen puts onto this Tech Zone website for their financial advisors all of their knowledge content, and a lot of it they put in the form of a decision tree. Here's one example. There's something called a tapered annual allowance. So tapered means it reduces over time. And it's to do with your pension scheme once you've got to retirement age. So there's a little bit of a preamble here, but the rules, essentially the rules are quite different depending on when you entered the scheme, what your circumstances are. So they use the decision tree. So you can see down here. So this is actual live. Which tax year is it being assessed? So that's the first question that you get. So if I chose this one, I get a certain path. If I chose this one, I get a different path. What changed there is that from 2020 onwards, this limit changed. Then we can roll down to the next question. So what is your income? What's your threshold, etc. And essentially you go down the path, and this is the answer based on the questions that I chose. But if I changed the flow, I get a completely different answer. There is probably about 12 different possible answers here depending on my circumstances. Again, very difficult for the financial advisor to put in a search that takes them directly to this answer. So a decision tree works really well there. And as I said, it's all created in our system, but it can be produced for consumption by someone inside your organization, like a contact center agent, or deployed directly up onto something like a website or a mobile app. Really powerful. And if you think about it, we haven't asked the user to do a search at all. We've simply said, great, I'll guide you through the process. So once again, I've got the screenshot here of this, which will be in the deck. Okay, so far we've talked 3 out of the 4 key concepts. So just to recap, there's cognitive search, auto-related content, and then there were decision trees. I now want to introduce yet another last concept called contextual knowledge. And I'm hoping this one will be really interesting to you from a contact center perspective. Just to set the scene again, I'm going to go to one more poll question. So this poll question is very specific to contact center. So the poll will come up again on your screen for you to input. The question is, how much time do you think your contact center agents in your organization spend searching for information during their day? Less than 5%, up to 10%, up to 20%, more than 20%. Again, I've run this question in a few other seminars around the region and get kind of quite a range of answers. It's always quite interesting to see what the variation is in this. So I'll give it another 10 or 20 seconds just to populate, and we'll see what the spread is across your association. Alrighty, we must be nearly had an answer there. How are we looking? Here we go. All right, this is quite common. So nearly everywhere I run this poll question, the more than 20% option is the dominant one. So that's pretty big. More than 20% of productive time for a contact center agent is searching for the information that they need. So if we could improve that, I guess if you look at those two bottom ones combined up to 20%, if we could make it just a bit easier for the agent to get the information without having to spend a lot of time going and looking for it, the improvement in productivity, cost savings, but also in satisfaction of both the agent and the customer, we should be able to make a very big impact on that. So let's look at how we might be able to do that with something I call contextual knowledge. So what is contextual knowledge? Let me go back a step and say the three previous concepts that I've introduced to you, I will still acknowledge that we're asking the user, be it a customer or an employee, to initiate finding the information. So they're still going and searching for the information somehow. Cognitive search, they're making a search. Hopefully it's a quick and easy search, but it's still asking for a search. Decision trees, they're still having to go through the process. I want to turn this model around. When your contact center agent turns up to work, there will be a key system that they use. I imagine you call it their agent desktop or their CRM or whatever you get them to work with. That's the thing they use to do their job. That's the thing they're probably looking at when they're talking to the customer. The thing is that when they're using that system, they're generating useful data. And the data that I'm talking about could be things like this. Where's the customer located? What products and services do they have with us? What are they doing right now? Have they contacted us recently, like in the last week or 2 weeks? All of these things collectively add up to what I would call the context. That is, what is going on right now? What is this business process and what the customer is calling us for? We should be able to leverage that. So why ask the agent to stop from this operational system and use the KM system to make a search when we've got a lot of useful data here? So in simple terms, it's just the concept of integrating this operational system with the KM system. And the operational system passes the data to the KM system to perform an automatic search. And we bring a results list back to the user, which could be the agent, to suggest to them, based on what I can see you doing on your operational system while you're having a conversation with the customer, I think this knowledge might be useful. So we've turned the model around from the user having to pull the information to one where we push the information before they even know they need it. So I want to give you a few examples of what that could look like. This one is a screenshot of a quick demo. So this is a CRM system, probably looks familiar to some of you. It's a third party, it's not Verint. This is the Verint knowledge embedded into the CRM. I'm going to play this recording and I'll explain what's going on as it's happening. So we've got a user here, they open up a case. And the case they're looking is to do with mobile internet. So this is a telco example. And the term mobile internet, once they click on context, is used to automatically bring back a piece of knowledge. If I change the subject to something else, NBN, and hit save, the knowledge will update, and it happens as fast as you can see there on the screen. So every time something changes in the operational system, the knowledge suggested gets updated. And here we see the agent opening up a document, and this is actually another decision tree. So we could combine the idea of contextual knowledge with some of those other concepts we've already used, like decision trees, to make a very powerful environment there. So the whole idea we've got is that the user here just did their job in the CRM. The knowledge all happened automatically, and they just looked at it and said, yeah, I can use that, or no, I don't use it. Oops, sorry, I went up the wrong way. So that's an example with the CRM. I'll give you another example with an agent desktop. This one's on a Avaya desktop, but the concept works equally with any agent desktop. So what's happened here is in the left-hand side of the screen is the Avaya agent desktop is hosting a live chat. So the customer's David Campbell, and there's an agent called Sarah, and they had this conversation, and the conversation here is to the effect of, this customer has a car loan with us, and we're going to try and add a new car loan, so that will be a multi-vehicle loan. We pick up this entire string in Avaya, and we send it across to the Verint knowledge system, which is in this side. And as you can see, they take up a little bit more of the screen space. That's just their choice than the previous one. I've seen all sorts of examples of that. We then process this search, and we come back with this results list. The contact center agent did not have to do anything to get this set of results. She just had the conversation, and that's what you want. You want the agent concentrating on the conversation with the customer, and we will then bring up relevant documents to multi-vehicle loan. As the conversation went on, this would continue to update each time. And so then we've got this idea that the knowledge has been pushed. So that's two examples for kind of internal use. And lastly, I wanted to show you this again in a live example. Go back to my browser. I'm going to go back to Fidelity. But this time, let's say, if you remember, I was doing the search on the ISA. This time around, I'm ready to open an investment savings account, a junior investment savings account. So again, you can do this yourself. I go and I open up Junior ISA. So everything I'm showing you at the moment is their website. So it's not built by Verint. I'll show you when the Verint bit comes in. So all of this, you can read through it. And you can say, yep, I would like to open one. I'm ready. And then they bring up a form for you to fill in. So this is pretty standard website, supporting a transaction for a customer. Here's the interesting bit. What we know from research is that if a customer is doing a process like this or a transaction like this, and they somehow get stuck. So let's say I got partway through this, and it asked me a question that I don't know the answer to. Oops, I'm sorry. Go back. Trying to resolve my address. Let's say I don't know what my national insurance number is or whatever. If I have to tab away from this screen to ask for some information, what we know from research is that there's a very high chance the customer will abandon the process. You lose them there. Okay, now this is the bit where Verint comes in and contextual knowledge comes in. Where it says need help, they populate these suggested questions here based on the context over here. So whatever's happened here is going to drive the suggested knowledge that's being offered to the customer here. So it should be relevant. This compared with the idea that the customer doesn't know how to do something on here, and so they've got to go and find an FAQ somewhere else on the website, the chances of the customer completing here are way higher. We know that from our research that the abandon rate drops significantly. So in a sales process, that means you will convert the sale much more often. In a service process, it means that you probably complete the service request without going to, without them deflecting, for example, to make a phone call or something like that. So this is the same concept, contextual knowledge, but working in self-service. And I wanted to show you that because this is a live example. I don't control this. This is one of our clients there. Okay, so again, I've screenshotted that for you just for an example. And lastly, to go right to sort of the latest technology, you could even apply this concept to Chatbot. I'll jump back, and I've got my last. Sorry, I can't see. There we go. Okay, again, another site you could go to. So that's Spark Telco in New Zealand. If you went on their help and support page, it's using a chatbot and knowledge. So how do chatbots and knowledge work together? Let me give you an example here. So their chatbot's called Ivy. Here's an example. How do I set up international roaming? Okay, before I hit go on this, let's just stop for a moment and think about what's happening here. A chatbot is trying to mimic a human conversation, so it also needs to cognitively process the conversation. The problem you've got is human beings when your customers are really hard to control. You can't get them to ask the question exactly how you want. So a chatbot has the job of trying to work out, is what Tim said the same as what Aaliyah said or Sissy said? We all say it in a different way. It's got to distill that down to what we call a common intent. The bigger problem a chatbot's got is the customer often asks a question that's not specific. It could have two meanings. And how do you process that? So back to this. How do I set up international roaming? Looks like a pretty obvious question. Let's stop for a tick. Do I actually mean how do I purchase international roaming? As in, I already have my phone package and I want to add international roaming to it because I'm going to travel. Or do I mean I'm about to get on the plane? How do I activate international roaming, which I've already purchased previously? Or have I already arrived in the other country and I don't think it's working? How do I troubleshoot international roaming? So this is a somewhat ambiguous question that I've asked you, and customers do this to you. So your real problem is that your average chatbot vendor will encourage you to design the chatbot conversation. So when it has a question like this, it will return a question back to the customer and say, did you mean this, this, this? Again, we know from research that this annoys customers if they don't get something really quickly. What I like about this particular chatbot and this particular client is that they use knowledge as part of the solution. So when I hit go, again, this is all live, you can do this yourself. The answer it comes back with is a bit of a short answer from the chatbot, but essentially the chatbot's saying, I'm not quite sure whether you mean you want to buy a roaming pack, you have issues with a roaming pack, you want to know how to connect overseas, you want to solve your problems. So this is a set of results from the knowledge system that can cover all the meanings. And so what we do is we process what's given to us from the chatbot and we say, okay, we need to send back a range of knowledge relevant for international roaming. So the customer right there, even if they haven't specifically asked for solving roaming problems, gets a link to it. And then when they link to it, it takes them to the knowledge item sitting on the website, and in a minute, the chatbot follows. For me, this is really good design of a chatbot. So chatbot's great technology, but it's certainly possible with great technology like a chatbot to still deploy it so that the customer experience is not great. Inserting knowledge into the chatbot conversation and the chatbot experience, in my opinion, gives you a bigger chance of customer satisfaction. And so that's really the contextual knowledge model working within a chatbot model. So again, really powerful there. How am I going for time? 10 after, I think we're going okay. So I'm just going to wrap up and a little bit salesy here. If you're asking where have we done this before, this first row are all organizations that we've done in either in Indonesia or countries nearby. And incidentally, we certainly support Indonesian language. And the rest of them that populated there tend to be by industry. So we're pretty good in a range of industries: financial services, banking, telco, retail. And there's a few kind of random ones there as well. And my last slide, just to finish off with, I just want to talk a little bit about why would you do this. This is what I'll refer to as proof points. So out of those clients, I picked a few that have published their return on investment and where they got it. So one of them was Capgemini, who their business challenge was that they wanted to improve the productivity and the onboarding of their staff. They're an outsourcer from memory, so they have a real challenge when they have a constant turnover of contact center agencies in a BPO model. So they used the power of the search automation to make it easier for the agent to find what they wanted. They claim the total handle time for their agents is reduced by 75%. That's very powerful. The next one was Fedex. I'm sure you all know them. Their real challenge was they deal in globally, and they wanted global consistency. Things like the advice they give to customers, the quality, and they want to do that really quickly. They wanted to make sure that guidance could be managed centrally but distributed. So they've deployed this, and they do it at 30 global contact centers. Number 3 was the site I spent a little bit of time on today. They wanted to deflect low-value repetitive contacts out of the contact center because it's a very expensive way of handling pretty simple questions. And what you saw me demonstrate by doing that, as I said, they say the consumption of help, so people visiting that section of their website where a cognitive search is, they more than doubled. And they do also claim an equivalent reduction in calls into their contact center. A couple of retailers, online retailers, wanted to improve the customer experience. They made really big use of decision trees, like what I showed you today with the financial advisors. So you can go onto their site, and if you have some sort of problem, you can run through a decision tree. They both said very similar things in terms of customer satisfaction. They said their CSAT measure increased by around 3.5%, which on its own paid for the knowledge project. And lastly, wanted to lower the cost of admin. BMW is a pretty cool example we've got because they can actually deliver knowledge into the car in the UK. The main thing they were able to do was lower the cost of authoring the knowledge. So they wanted to put all their money into the cars or the selling of the cars or the sporting of the cars. They don't want to waste a lot of time on the administration of knowledge. And so by moving to this knowledge model where there was really just automated search, automated or cognitive search, automated related content, they saved way way less admin than some of the other products there. So it's just a bit of examples of why you would do this and how you would convince your executives that we should get a budget for this type of approach. So having said that, I wanted to really thank you for hosting me once again. I'm going to hand back to Sissy to wrap up, and I think we'll have some Q&A session at the end. Sissy?
Okay, thank you, Tim. So the next slide, I would like to emphasize a few key takeaways from our session today. From all this sharing by Tim, I would say that we can increase the productivity, artinya meningkatkan produktivitas dari semua kegiatan operational, baik itu dari agent ataukah layer dari self-service sendiri. Kenapa? Karena informasi yang diberikan lebih akurat dan waktu yang dibutuhkan lebih cepat. Dari situ juga average handle time dengan sendirinya akan menurun. Kenapa menurun? Karena ya dari setiap channel yang dilakukan komunikasi dengan customer untuk require informasi itu sudah dilakukan dengan lebih komprehensif ya. Artinya biasanya kan misalnya komunikasi dengan agent yang biasanya memerlukan waktu beberapa saat bisa jadi 30 detik, mungkin 30 detik dalam call itu sangat berarti. Tanpa spending waktu yang banyak, kita dapat menyajikan informasi yang lebih akurat. Demikian juga untuk informasi melalui self-service dari chat atau bisa juga dari social media, kita akan bisa lebih menyajikan informasi yang lebih baik, lebih cepat dan lebih akurat. Dengan sendirinya eskalasi akan menurun karena agent lebih percaya diri dengan jawaban akurat dari cognitive search ini sendiri gitu. Apakah itu komplain, apakah itu permintaan informasi, akan lebih sedikit eskalasinya. 3 hal ini, produktivitas, AHT, eskalasi mungkin lebih ke internal. Tapi pada akhirnya yang kita ingin emphasize adalah kita pengen mengoptimize kepuasan pelanggan. Kepuasan pelanggan ini jadi naik karena semua informasi yang dibutuhkan kita dengan briefly dan swiftly bisa menyajikan kepada customer secara otomatis. Next please. And then semua key takeaways ini, produktivitas yang naik, AHT yang turun, eskalasi yang turun, dan kepuasan pelanggan yang naik. Dengan sendirinya juga salah satu yang penting adalah menghemat biaya, menghemat waktu, juga menghemat tenaga yang di-spend oleh perusahaan untuk menyajikan pengetahuan secara online. Dan saya tidak melulu kita sharing informasi ini tentang misalnya produk, bisa juga tentang internal knowledge within the organization. Jadi bisa jadi informasi internal kan kita bisa separate layer-layer, apakah itu untuk back office untuk pegawai sendiri, apakah itu untuk customer. Itu bisa kita sajikan dengan mengandalkan cognitive intelligence ini. Dan pada akhirnya semua ini bisa dinyatakan dengan mengandalkan hanya satu sumber data untuk seluruh jajaran organisasi, yang artinya semua pengetahuan itu didisburse pada waktu yang sama untuk semua jajaran atau untuk semua lini informasi yang disediakan oleh perusahaan. Setiap orang mendapat update pengetahuan pada waktu yang sama dengan informasi yang konsisten. Demikian dari saya. Next slide. Dan yang terakhir ini juga saya pengen terima kasih untuk Poli untuk kerjasamanya. Oke, Alia, over to you. Jangan lupa untuk engage with us, ada credential kami di sini, dengan senang hati kami akan melayani semua informasi yang diperlukan.
Okay, give it applause for Verint for giving such an awesome presentation today. Baik, Bapak Ibu, kami akan melanjutkan sesinya ke sesi question and answer. Jadi rekan-rekan di sini kami berikan kesempatan untuk bertanya kepada dua pembicara kita hari ini, Mbak Sisi Thohir dari Verint, kemudian Mr. Tim Matthews.
Ya, oke. Alia, juga untuk question and answer ini kita akan dibantu juga oleh Pak Irwan Sutanto. Pak Irwan Sutanto adalah head dari delivery di Verint Indonesia. Mungkin ada beberapa pertanyaan mengenai delivery, Pak Irwan akan membantu.
Baik, rekan-rekan, kami buka sesi Q&A hari ini. Kami punya 5 hadiah menarik, 5 berupa voucher OVO senilai Rp300.000 untuk masing-masing pemenang. Jadi silakan untuk rekan-rekan di sini kami kasih kesempatan untuk meninggalkan pertanyaan di chatting box, atau mungkin bagi yang ingin bertanya untuk open mic silakan raise hand, dan kami akan berikan kesempatan untuk ngobrol langsung bersama Mbak Sisi dan Mr. Matthew. Baik, silakan untuk pertama, karena sudah ada pertanyaan yang masuk, saya mulai bacakan dari pertanyaan dari Mas Irfan dari Coca-Cola Euro Pacific Partners Indonesia. Pak Irfan bertanya, I was wondering how knowledge management could directly benefit to customer self-service. How much effort that company need to ensure it will go flawlessly. Silakan Mbak Sisi atau Mr. Tim Matthews to answer the question.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to answer that one. So, firstly, it's absolutely essential that you have a good customer service knowledge regime. The customers themselves expect to be able to get their own answers, and they in fact prefer to get their own answers. There's a lot of research out there that shows that the customer prefers to self-serve so long as it works. But if it doesn't work, they will abandon very quickly and then go to your assisted channels. The thing is, how easy is it to do that? So I would have to say, currently, I'm seeing that it's not particularly easy for big organizations to put the customer in that position to get it so that it works. And the reason that it doesn't is because they haven't thought through the customer journey and designed the flow to that. They don't have a search engine that delivers the answers regardless of how they search. And they have silos of content. So they're constantly spending all their time updating content rather than thinking about, is this content fit for purpose? So what we're trying to do here is put you in a position where you spend less time authoring the content and more time thinking about, when the customer looks for the answer, is this content and is the search mechanism or the delivery mechanism, like a decision tree, going to get them there quickly? You still have to put that effort into it, but we're really sort of right-sizing the effort to where it matters. At the moment, I think probably what's going on in your organization is you're having to spend too much of your available time on things that don't directly give you the customer outcome that you want.
Okay. Any additional answer from Mbak Sisi?
Yeah, I think I agree with them.
Okay, sure. We have a second question from Mbak Deni Rizky from PT Wisma Kartika. Jessica, please show the question. Thank you. Okay, I will read the question. Regarding this search process, what challenges will emerge from this? Okay. From this keyword search process in the future, and what is the active role that can be done so that this search process becomes high accuracy?
Okay, I can talk to that one as well. So as I said before, the current generation of knowledge search is a keyword or a natural language processing. The new generation is cognitive. So the main thing that you need to look for is a knowledge system with a search capability that is self-learning. If it is self-learning, the extra work that you have to do is way lower than what you would probably have to do in another system. You don't have to map synonyms or anything like that. What you'll still need to do is an ongoing effort, and what you should start to look at now to put yourself in a position to leverage it is, how well is your current knowledge base aligned to your what I call is the use cases. So I like to think of knowledge being aligned to the customer journey. So I would go back right now, even before you buy a system, and I would say, okay, what for example are our top 10 call drivers or our top 10 content drivers? Why do people come in and contact us? And then I would go and say, okay, what is the knowledge that specifically answers that question? What I guarantee you'll find is that you don't have a one-to-one alignment. What you've actually got is you're asking the agents to look at quite a large document that describes, if you're a telco, it might describe the entire campaign, but it doesn't describe the one question that the customer is asking. So go and look at that. And what we aim to do as part of moving to the new knowledge model is to restructure the knowledge and align it to the customer journey. Sometimes that means we'll break down the knowledge into smaller components. You can't do that all at once. It's too big a challenge. So what you need to do is do it over time. And the place to start is with the highest value. Usually the highest value is your top call driver, because that's the thing you get the most of. So that's where I would start to get to in preparation. Go and do that. What are our top call drivers? And then look at all the knowledge that aligns to it and then say, okay, how could we break this up a little better?
Ya, mungkin saya tambahkan sedikit ya. Dari Pak Denny ini, concern-nya mungkin Pak Denny pengen dapat search process untuk accuracy-nya. Mungkin untuk NLP ini, ya betul ada pekerjaan, ada homework-nya dari sisi enterprise untuk mengupdate jargon-jargon terakhir supaya apa yang ditanyakan dengan apa yang dijawab akan lebih relate. Nah, untuk cognitive research, cognitive intelligence ini hasil yang didapatkan tetap baik karena kita menggunakan teknologinya gitu. Walaupun NLP is good enough, but cognitive search is even better.
And just to give a little pitch for Verint, we do consulting on how to make that structure. Exactly the question you've asked, how do we prepare for it? We have a consulting service that can help you with that.
Mm-hmm.
Baik, thank you Tim for the answer and Mbak Sisi. And we have another question from Lim Yong Liang from PT CIMB Niaga. So we have 3 questions from Mr. Lim Yong Liang. First, how is the support on Bahasa Indonesia? And then second, do I need administrative staff to manage this knowledge management system, ensuring it is always updated, smart enough to understand the context correctly? And then third, can the system handles knowledge in the video format? Does it mean that we have to put some abstract to describe the video? Jessica, please keep the presentation so Tim can see the question.
Yes, I can see that. I think maybe Sissy or Owen can answer the first one.
I think for number one.
What do you mean? Do you mean the language? Sorry.
Yeah, so, bahasa support. I think you mentioned that we support Bahasa Indonesia.
Absolutely, we support all the major Asian languages, including Bahasa Indonesia. Do I need administrative staff to manage this knowledge management? Okay, you need some level of administrative staff to manage any system and to manage any knowledge management system. So what I would say about this new model of knowledge management is that you need less of those staff than you do with current generation, because the system works out of the box with the cognitive model and it's self-learning. So what you will find is, so long as you, if you're committed to the concept of knowledge management, this is probably one of the most efficient ways in terms of the amount of staff, like support staff you need compared to other systems. Number 3, absolutely. So I didn't show you any content with video in it, but the knowledge can have audio, video, graphics, absolutely anything. It's up to you whether you need some abstract to describe it or not. I mean, every knowledge item has a title that's searchable, but I've got plenty of clients that do nothing more than just have the title of the video, which is the same as in YouTube. You have a title of a video that's searchable, and then you've just got the video content and nothing else. I've got other clients that embed the video in a knowledge document. So there's descriptions of other things, and then there's the video. You can do it either way.
Okay, thank you, Matthew, for the explanation. So we have the next question. Okay, Jessica, please show the next question from Mr. Ardi, PT SPIN. What are the best practices from cognitive intelligence system method in anticipating data leaks and securing user data? And then second, from the presentation delivered, what are the advantages of other similar platforms?
Okay, so the first question here, I guess the first comment I would make is that a knowledge management system typically doesn't have sensitive user data in it. So, for example, it's not like a CRM where you have customer data. So it won't say, you won't have anything in it where it says, this is Tim Matthews and he lives at such and such, and his bank account details of this. You're typically publishing information that you want multiple people to access. So you don't tend to have the same issues there. What I will acknowledge, though, is that you have a difference between information that you would consider public, that is, that you would be happy for, say, a customer or someone outside your organization to see, and other content that you only want internal to view. So within our model, a single knowledge document can have sections in it that are defined for public consumption, private consumption, and we can control the access of that so that if you are wanting to surface that knowledge document up to, say, a website, all that can be sent from that document is the public section. But the reason that's really useful is that when, say, the contact center agent opens up that piece of knowledge, they will see both the public and the private section. So they can see what the customer's seen, but then you can give them some particular private instructions down below it. So we can do that within a single document. We can also, within the overall structure of the knowledge base, we can secure parts of the knowledge base. So a really common thing would be like the legal department of your organization or the HR department of your organization might have some documents they don't want anyone else to see. And so that section of the knowledge base can be secured so that on a permission basis, only HR or legal department roles can see it and no one else can see it. More generally, if we're talking about data leaks, I think the normal sort of security applies. So, for example, we can encrypt data in transit, all that sort of stuff. If you wanted to know more about that, we could take that question offline, I think, because it's probably a big subject. From the presentation delivered, what are the advantages of similar platforms? Not sure I understood that question. Did you mean similar knowledge? Again, Artie, is it? Artie, we're available if you wanted to contact us, and I think we're nearly out of time. I'd be happy to answer that question offline. I just didn't quite understand it. I do apologize.
Yeah, Pak Ardi, please reach out to us if you should you have further question, especially from the second points to clarify. Okay, I think we can move on. I think Pak Lim Yong from CIMB is raising his hand.
Okay, so we will let from CIMB. Okay, I will the team to let Pak Lim to ask the question.
Hi, Bu. Can you move back to the previous slide with my questions? I want to elaborate a little bit.
Okay, sure. Mbak Jessica, please show the. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Tim. So I just wanted to emphasize my questions number 2.
Right.
So do you think that the administrative staff can be part of the key success factor in deploying this knowledge management system? Because my concern is that many tools and many systems can bring whatever benefit they can offer, but if at the end of the day the organization fail to recognize that people is the main, it's part of the key success factor, then probably they will not achieve what they are looking for. What is your experience?
Fantastic. You are so right. I cannot tell you how right you are. If I had another hour or two, I would take you through our KM consulting method. And it absolutely drives to exactly what you said. While the system that I showed you today is the latest generation and really, really powerful, it's still possible to implement it poorly. So the way that you implement it well comes down to your team. So when you say administrative staff, I'm thinking like your KM specialist team, for example. So my view is there are 5 dimensions to a successful knowledge capability, and only one of them is really tightly aligned to the technology. There's the kind of the user experience, and that's what everyone focuses on. How easy is it to search? What does it look like? What does the UI look like? All of that stuff. Yeah, that's a system thing. But then the next one is your content. So how well aligned is your content to what the users are asking for? And you could have really poorly aligned content in the best system in the world, and that comes down to your KM team to look at what I said, the top call drivers, and say, how do we make sure we've got the best content? So we consult on content modeling, as we call it. Number 3 is your metrics. Do you have a closed loop where you take the reports from knowledge, but you align them with the reports you get from your operational system? And you can say, I know that when this user looked up this piece of knowledge, it was because this customer was asking this question. And those two things don't align well. So we've got a way of mapping back and improving the process. You don't answer that just from the KM system. So again, we consult on how to put that kind of continuous metrics in place. The last two have nothing to do with the system and all to do with your administrative team. It is the governance that you put around things like who can author and what approval processes are in place, things like what styles, what color, all that sort of stuff you use, and what I'll call it engagement. What can you do to constantly encourage the greater users in your organization to actively participate in the knowledge process? A big challenge with knowledge systems is they look great on day one. 6 months later, if there hasn't been this good culture of engagement encouraged by your team, I'll call it administrative, it includes the executives, 6 months later, the knowledge hasn't been updated. The system's sitting there and it's a great system. It's almost like you've bought a sports car and 6 months later, no one's driving it. Well, it's not much of a sports car if it's sitting in the garage, So I absolutely love your question. Now I understand it. And it's really the key to success is the commitment that you have from the executive layer and from what you call the administrative staff, I kind of call the KM competency team, to help the organization drive it. Really, really critical.
Okay, Mr. Lim, is there any additional question, or if you don't have, we will move on to our last question. Okay, thank you, Mr. Lim, for the question. I will move on to our last question from Bapak Sony Marcelini from PT Bank DKI. Bu Sisi, mohon sarannya terkait kapasitas agent melayani customer, usia berapakah yang ideal untuk dijadikan dedicated agent? Terima kasih.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Sony untuk pertanyaannya. Untuk specifically usia sih menurut saya balik lagi ke capability dari agentnya sendiri ya. Pada saat kita proses procuring, saya nggak akan bilang ada spesifik rentang usia yang ideal, tapi balik lagi kepada maturity dari agentnya itu sendiri dan background pengetahuannya, Pak.
Baik, okay, Mbak Sisi, is there any additional answer or
Pak Sony, apa ada pertanyaan lebih lanjut mungkin?
Izin Bu Sisi ya, karena kan kami punya konsep ke depannya itu kan mau mengikuti perkembangan ke arah digital ya Bu, makanya kita untuk kondisi saat ini masih agak bingung nih, karena kan anak-anak milenial sekarang ini kan lebih mudah turnover-nya. Jadi agak ngeri juga kita untuk merekrut mereka gitu. Makanya kan usia-usia mereka itu kan usia-usia rentan, istilahnya hanya sekedar jadi batu loncatan aja gitu loh.
Iya Pak.
Usia matang untuk jadi seorang agent dedicated itu yang kita mau rentang usianya itu Bu.
Mengerti sekali Pak problem ini. saya kira dengan implementasi knowledge management ini akan sangat berguna. Kenapa Pak? Karena instead of agent itu belajar sendiri pengetahuannya, mereka akan dibantu sama knowledge management ini. Jadi proses mereka belajar akan lebih cepat. Jadi untuk mengantisipasi turnover agent yang banyak, yang sangat tinggi ini, mereka juga dengan waktu yang lebih singkat untuk mengetahui apakah itu campaign-campaign terbaru, apakah itu produk-produk terbaru yang di launch perusahaan, bisa juga dengan informasi sesuai informasi seputar perusahaan gitu sih Pak. Jadi untuk antisipasi turnover ini, selain dari kualitas agentnya itu sendiri, maturity-nya, kita juga bisa bantu dengan memberikan informasi yang lebih akurat buat mereka untuk mencari lebih cepat gitu sih Pak. Apakah itu menjawab Pak Sony?
Ya mungkin ini jadi masukan buat kami juga nantinya Bu Sisi. Terima kasih Bu.
Sama-sama Pak Sony.
Okay, I think because we scheduled the webinar until 11:40 a.m. at Jakarta time, so I think we should wrap up the session. Mbak Sisi will answer the last question directly to Mbak Putri Setio. So please contact Mbak Sisi or maybe Mr. Tim to know more about Verint product. Oke.
Ya, dengan senang hati Mbak Putri.
Baik, Mbak Jessica mungkin bisa ditampilkan lagi kontaknya Mbak Sisi dan tim. So maybe the participant can screen capture for the last time before we wrap up the session. Oke, baik rekan-rekan di sini silakan di screen capture, dihubungi ke nomor tersebut. Jadi teman-teman bisa menanyakan langsung terkait produk-produk dari Verint. Baik. Sebelum kita akhiri sesi hari ini, kami akan undang teman-teman untuk menyalakan kameranya agar kita bisa foto bersama. Ya, untuk sesi dokumentasi dari kami, silakan teman-teman kita nyalakan dulu kameranya. Tim dari ICC akan memfoto wajah-wajah ganteng dan cantik dari rekan-rekan yang bergabung hari ini. Silakan rekan-rekan. Baik, sebagian besar sudah menyalakan kameranya. Mari tim, silakan di direct untuk di capture.
Let's take some picture. 1, 2, 3, smile. Other slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Terima kasih.
Baik, dengan sesi foto hari ini, sesi tersebut menutup seluruh kegiatan webinar hari ini. Terima kasih untuk rekan-rekan semua yang hadir dan aktif bertanya di dalam sesi hari ini. Semoga presentasi dari Verint hari ini membantu teman-teman untuk meningkatkan kualitas di kontak centernya masing-masing. Apabila, kami juga akan coba ditampilkan dulu ya teman-teman, ada survei dari Verint untuk mendapatkan lucky draw dari hadiah dari Poli. Silakan ditampilkan teman-teman. Baik, ya. Kami ada survei dari Verint untuk diisi. Nah, bagi teman-teman yang mengisi survei ini, kami akan pilih 3 pengisi terbaik untuk mendapatkan hadiah dari Poli berupa Poli Personal USB Bluetooth Smart Speakerphone, Poli Professional Webcam, dan Poli headset Jadi rekan-rekan di sini silakan untuk diisi surveinya agar bisa mendapatkan salah satu dari hadiah tersebut.
Iya, juga ada voucher ya, Mbak Lia.
Vouchernya akan kami umumkan setelah ini. Silakan teman-teman di screen capture dulu, di scan QR code-nya, kemudian kami akan umumkan 5 pemenang terbaik dari sesi question and answer hari ini. Baik, kami tutup sesi Verint-nya, survei Verint-nya. Kami akan lanjutkan ke pemenang pertanyaan terbaik. Silakan diumumkan, Mbak Jessica. Baik. Winner best question dengan hadiah berupa voucher OVO senilai Rp300.000 masing-masing untuk 5 orang pemenang. Kami umumkan selamat kepada pertama Muhammad Irfan dari Coca-Cola Euro Pacific Partners Indonesia, yang kedua Mbak Deni Rizky dari Wisma Kartika, yang ketiga Bapak Lim Yong Liang dari PT Siambi Niaga, keempat Bapak Ardi dari PT SPIN, yang kelima Bapak Sony Marcelini dari Bank DKI. Selamat kepada seluruh pemenang. Silakan menghubungi kami di helpdesk ICCA di nomor 0811-807-5599. Kami ulangi kembali, silakan menghubungi kami di helpdesk ICCA di 0811-807-5599. Nanti tim kami juga akan, apabila Anda belum menghubungi kami akan juga coba hubungi ke nomor yang sudah terdaftar di registrasi form kami. Silakan bagi rekan-rekan semua, kami tunggu surveinya untuk mengisi surveinya di bit.ly/Verint-ICCA, dan kami akan memilih memilih pemenang untuk mendapatkan hadiah dari Poli. Salah satunya yaitu Poli Personal USB Bluetooth Smart Speakerphone, kedua Poli Professional Webcam, dan ketiga Poli Headset. Baik, sekian mungkin sesi dari hari ini. Terima kasih untuk teman-teman yang hadir hari ini. Semoga bermanfaat kegiatan kami hari ini. Jangan lupa untuk menghubungi Verint, dan terima kasih juga kepada Poli sudah mendukung kegiatan hari ini. Saya Alia Amalia dari Indonesia Contact Center Association pamit undur diri. Terima kasih. Selamat siang semuanya.
Terima kasih semuanya Bapak
Terima kasih.
Ibu.
Selamat siang.
Terima
Cheers.
kasih.
Halo Mas Doni.